Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing a real quick video about the new Ghost Poro changes and why they're so powerful for some supports and AD carries, particularly in the bot lane. So I just want to give you the inside scoop on this. There's not a lot of content creators that are talking about this yet. I suspect there might be within the next couple of weeks once people figure this out, but you know, I'm going to give you that early lead so you can gain some ELO off of this. Be sure to check out the rest of the content on the channel as well. If you like this, like and subscribe. It just takes a couple of clicks. It's easy. It's free. It helps out a ton with visibility on the channel. Also, be sure to look at the support tier list, which I just released. I also have patch notes, and I'm going to release a jungle tier list and an AD carry tier list on this patch as well. And I might do mid and top also. So be sure to check all of that out. And we stream most nights starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'd love to have you stop by. We have a good time. I try to be as interactive as possible with the chat. We have a super friendly chat. We'd love to have you. And we usually go till about 2 a.m. most nights. So come by, check it out, ask any questions, or just sit back and enjoy the show. Okay, let's go ahead and get in here. So what's up with Ghost Poro? Why does it matter on this patch? Well, it just got buffed on patch 9.9, and this is something that a lot of content creators were sleeping on, and I talked about how this could be potentially really strong, and I did test it out last night, the first night of 9.9, and it actually does work the way that I predicted. So we're going to go into what that means for the overall meta, talk about what this is anyways. So Ghost Poro, they just changed this. Additionally grants you 2 adaptive force when a Ghost Poro spots an enemy. Okay, seems innocuous enough. Seems like it's not going to be a huge deal. It actually is a very big deal for stacking though, particularly in the bot lane where you're against 2 opponents and you can place it in a bush that can spot people easily. So let's go into exactly what this means. So let's look at Ghost Poro itself here really quick so everyone kind of understands what this is and how it works. Okay, so it's in the Domination tree, 3rd row, competes with Zombie Ward and Eyeball Collection. In this tree, traditionally has been the weakest of the 3 options. So a big problem with Ghost Poro is that it's visible, first of all, so they can see it as a ward, and it only has 450 sight radius. It's really important that you understand that distinction because that's less than half of most wards. These zombie wards, for example, if we look here, it says 1100 sight. If you look kind of near the bottom of the second paragraph there, next to the word sight, it sees for 1100 units, and that's where most wards see. They have 1100 range. So this has less than half of a normal ward. That's less sight range than an auto attack on most AD carries. So it's really, really small range. So historically with the Ghost Poro, when you try to put it in places like in the river bush, it may not even potentially see most of the river, or even deep in their jungle, it may not see certain pathing. And so that's actually really dangerous to see just a little bit of an area but not see the whole thing, because you might feel like you're safe. You might feel like there's not going to be an enemy there, but then they're actually there just because you didn't have enough vision. So that's why Ghost Poro traditionally has sucked. Just because the vision's not big enough. So I wish they would improve the vision, but it doesn't look like they're going to do that anytime soon. However, they did change this a few patches ago to where all of these have some stacking mechanism to where you can eventually get to 30 ability power, which does drop down to 18 bonus attack damage as well. So whichever one suits your character better, it'll give you that. So for supports, it's usually ability power. If you take this on AD carry, it'll give you attack damage. Okay. So the stacking mechanic on Ghost Poro is whenever one of your wards disappears naturally, so whenever it times out, you get a Ghost Poro in its place. It only lasts for 1 minute, I believe. It lasts for 60 seconds. And so you would have to have 10 wards disappear in order to fully stack this up historically. But they just added on this patch to where if it spots an enemy, then it gives you an extra stack. And this is if it spots multiple enemies, it will give you multiple stacks. So whenever you have an AD carry and a support that roll up in bot lane, so if you put it right here, which we'll talk about, you put your zombie ward here, or your ward that's going to time out right here on the tip of this bush. Then once it times out and becomes a Ghost Poro, it's going to see about this much area around the bush. So if they get anywhere close to this bush, it's going to get scared and run away, and it's going to count as spotting them. Now, I believe the spotting area is much further than just the 450. I don't have any hard evidence for that, but anecdotally, it seems like it's further because I've had like the support go up and try to ward this bush when there's a Ghost Poro there. The Ghost Poro spots it, but then the enemy AD carries like over here or something, like trying to last hit. and it spotted both of them. So if it spots 2 people, then you get 2 extra stacks on it. So that means when the Poro appears, that's 1 stack, and then for each of these 2 people that it's likely to spot, that's 2 additional stacks. So that's 3 stacks right away. That's 6 AP every time this times out. And early on, those 1-minute wards, of course, time out in 1 minute, right? And so you place it here, and then over the course of 1 minute, you can get 3 stacks on it. So that's what's changed. That's what's powerful. That doesn't apply as much for jungle. You know, you can drop a jungle ward somewhere. It'll time out. It may or may not see somebody. Mid lane, if you put it here, may or may not see somebody within that 1 minute. Top lane, I think it could still apply pretty well, because if your top lane, similar concept applies. You just put your 1 minute ward right here. It'll time out. And then it's likely to see the enemy when they walk up in this lane, if they walk within this radius, right? So they can like hug the wall and probably get around it if they're really smart and they understand what you're doing with Ghost Poro. And to the same extent, bot lane can kind of do that. You know, they could hug this wall if they know that you're doing that with Ghost Poro and wait for it to time out. But it's going to require like a lot of foresight on their part. They're going to have to really like understand what you're doing with Ghost Poro and know your ward timing and just like hug this wall and not get close to that bush. Nobody's going to do that. Most people are going to walk up and see that bush. Now they could potentially combat this by trying to pink ward this bush and sweep it as well. But in order to put a pink ward in here, then the Ghost Poro is going to spot them probably. So they have like a 1 minute window where when you place that ward, if they come up and sweep it or pink ward it, they can clear it out before it turns into a Poro. But once again, this requires a lot of prep on the part of your enemies, and a lot of people just aren't going to be thinking on that level to try to shut down your Poro generation unless this becomes super popular. Particularly in the AD carry role and support role, and there's a bunch of YouTubers making all caps videos about it. Maybe they can combat this strat, but it's still going to be pretty good overall, I think. So that's how it works. That's what's up with it. So really, the core takeaway here is the Ghost Poro itself does not really matter that much. Like, it still kind of sucks. It gives you a little bit of extra vision, but with this strategy, you're not going to be trying to maximize the vision. You're just trying to maximize your stacks. Now, I will say, anecdotally, I didn't even use this optimally in 2 Recon games that I played last night, and I still got it fully stacked in under 15 minutes. I got one stacked in about 13 minutes, and the other one was, I think, like 14 minutes. So, if you think about it, you know, you start off with a ward, and I believe your wards, I don't remember how fast they replenish. It's like 2.5 or 3 minutes that you're going to get. If you do this the ideal way that I just talked about, you'll get 3 stacks every 3 minutes or so if the ward comes back every 3 minutes. And you start with 1 also. So you could very easily get this stacked in 10 minutes or less if you're doing this properly. Now, the trade-off here for this is you're not going to have as much vision in the river because you're going to be using your 1 minute ward here. So you got to be aware of that. However, Scuttle is not spawning for the first like 3 minutes or so. So that could potentially give you a little bit more, you know, a little bit more safety in terms of stacking this up early. But you can still put 1 in the river too if you want to. You could put maybe your first one here just to get that stacking, and then you could put your second ward in the river maybe. I have to check the exact timings on that. But you'll still get 1 stack when it times out, and if the enemy jungler walks past it, which is likely they're going to walk past it and potentially ignore it, or you could even put it in this bush to see, and then the enemy jungler is probably going to walk past this bush to go check the scuttle. So you can still get one stack and potentially 2 stacks off of that. You know, another cheeky thing that you could do is if you're like a mid laner or something, I guess you could do this here, is you could just drop your ward in the middle of the lane, and then someone's going to walk up and see it, and the Ghost Poro is going to spot them anyways. So I guess you don't even have to put it in the bush if you're just trying to get your Ghost Poro spotted. You can just put it like right here, and then they can't even walk to lane without the Ghost Poro spotting them right here. They're going to have to walk past the Ghost Poro to go to lane. So that's a pretty cheeky way to get some stacks off of it, because you can't clear it. Like, you can't just walk up and clear it normally. Like, they'd have to sweep this ward before it spawns, because it just sits there, you know? So, like, you can't drop a control ward. Like, once it spawns, they couldn't do something sneaky like drop a control ward here to disable it and then walk up and clear it, because it's not considered a ward. It's a, I don't think, I've never tried this, but I think it's considered like a different thing. It's a Ghost Poro. So the only way to clear it is to walk up and have it spot you. But anyways, So in ideal situations, even in not ideal situations, I've stacked this before 15 minutes. And what does that mean? That means you're getting 30 AP. And that's a 653 gold value. Now remember, everybody and their mother has been taking footwear in the bot lane, after a lot of the nerfs to the other runes, right? And so you saw pretty much every AD carry was taking magical footwear plus biscuits, and a vast majority of supports were also taking magical footwear plus biscuits, because people figured out, hey, free gold is really good. And magical footwear was a 350 gold value. You got normal boots, and then you got the magical, or you got brown boots rather, and then you got the magical enchantment for plus 10 movement speed on them. Plus 10 movement speed usually valued somewhere around 350 gold value. It might be slightly higher depending on your champ. It was about a 350 gold value at 10 minutes. Sometimes a little bit sooner than that. But you got absolutely no value before 10 minutes. It was a completely dead rune before 10 minutes. Okay? With this, you can potentially get some value, and you should get a lot of value. Place your first ward in that corner bush. 1 minute into the laning phase, you're going to be getting somewhere between 4 to 6 AP early on, and that's a huge gold value. I mean, 6 AP early is about, 130 or so gold value. So you are getting some incremental value early on in the lane before 10 minutes. And then, as I said, if you do this properly, you could have this fully stacked by 10 minutes potentially. For a 653 gold value, so it's almost double the value of footwear. And like I said earlier too, AD carries can use this as well, because it's not just AP, it translates over into AD. So having 18 extra AD is almost 2 longswords. Like, that's a big deal. So I think that that's really nice. And then later on, you get a nice little bonus of these Ghost Poros, especially for support. When your wards time out later, if you let your wards time out, you can get some extra vision on the map. Now, yeah, the vision's not going to be as good as a lot of other vision out there, but it's something. So that's handy. A cool thing about Ghost Poro that I didn't realize before doing research for this video is it can actually spot invisible champions too. So it scares away the Ghost Poro, but it doesn't reveal them. So that's kind of like weird. You have to pay attention carefully to see if your Ghost Poro disappears. But this could be a thing that could be decent in the mid to late game for spotting things like Twitch or Rengar or even Shaco. It's not going to help you out against things like Vayne, where you know that she's there, she's just going invisible. But for sneaky champions, it could work. So the best places to put things or to let your wards time out for Ghost Poro are obviously in big choke points, so around like ramps or in like the jungle bush near the raptors. Just places like that where you're going to see somebody if they walk through there with the Ghost Poro. So it's got some interesting uses later, but even if it literally did not spawn Ghost Poros anymore for the rest of the game, even if you never use that, still getting the 30 AP early is good. Just by comparison, that is better than a 20-minute mark Gathering Storm. So Gathering Storm gives you 24 ability power at 20 minutes, right? And it has 0 incremental value, before 10 minutes. At 10 minutes, you only get 8 ability power. That's like 1 rotation of this Ghost Poro. Remember, 1 rotation, doing it properly, where you're spotting 2 people, is going to give you 6 AP. So you can get that 1 rotation at 3 minutes into the game. You could even go set this ward. You could get this going even faster. You could set this ward if you time it correctly, depending on if you need to spot choke points or if your team's invading or whatever. You could set this ward in that bush super early and get it at level 1. You could have 6 extra AP when they first walk into lane. You could already have that Ghost Poro spawned. So you could get this going really, really early in lane to get that 6 extra AP. So that's good. So it has more incremental value than Gathering Storm. It's going to charge up a lot faster. You're going to get your power earlier. And then even at 20 minutes, it's still going to be stronger than Gathering Storm. Gathering Storm only gets stronger once the 30-minute mark comes about. So it's on par with Gathering Storm up until 30 minutes, which is really, really strong. So I think that makes this a very, very competitive rune overall. And it's a lot of value. I mean, that's more value than Klepto in terms of raw gold. Most Klepto users, especially for the first 25 minutes of the game or so, maybe Ezreal's an exception, but a lot of them aren't going to get more than 500 gold off of this. And 500 gold is pretty good. Now, yeah, you're getting your potions and you're getting some extra wards, you're getting some consumables, So you are still getting stuff with Klepto. But as far as like gold bags and like raw gold value that you're getting off of this, usually it's less than 500. So this is generating just as much gold, if not more, in terms of value as Klepto, right? And a lot of people think Klepto is really OP because it gives a lot of gold. Well, I'm here to introduce you to Ghost Poro. And almost everybody can use this. Like, everybody's going to have some kind of AP or AD ratio. It's not as good with tanks, but it's very, very good on enchanters and AP supports, and I think on ADs as well in the bot lane. Anyone that's kind of an offensive champion is going to like this. And, you know, like I said, you could maybe even use this in other lanes, even mid lane. Just drop it right in the middle of the lane right here. I mean, what are they going to do? Not go up in CS for a minute? It's going to spot them. Now, you're going to stack it a little bit slower because you're only going to spot one person instead of two. But even stacking it, you know, twice for every single ward that you throw down, we'll still get it stacked by probably 15 minutes or so, maybe 20, depending on how often you stack it. But, you know, once again, you're going to be able to get this up pretty quickly, especially if you're dropping your 1 minute ward constantly in here. Once again, you're giving up the little bit of vision that you could have on the side, but for that kind of payout, especially in the bot lane where you get double stacks on it, I think could definitely be worth it. You just have to be a little more careful with your vision. And as a support especially, even if they kind of shut it down early, right, if they somehow counter this early on, you're still going to be able to trigger 3 stacks every 2.5 minutes off of your normal wards once you complete your ward item. So it's almost guaranteed if you're completing your ward item from 10 to 12 minutes that you're going to be able to finish it off by 15 minutes. So super good on supports. I think very reasonable on AD carries and potentially situational on some laners. So that's good. Okay, but what about the other runes in Domination? Well, there's a lot of pretty good choices in Domination as a secondary rune choice, and they did buff a lot of them on this patch. They buffed a couple of the Hunters. They buffed Cheap Shot. So several of these are actually pretty good now. So you can go Ghost Poro. I think the one that's most likely that a lot of people would like is Taste of Blood. People really underestimate this rune. This is very, very good. It's a lot of sustain. I would argue, I haven't done the exact math on this, but I would almost certainly say this is more sustained than Biscuits in the bot lane over time. It's very consistent as well. It always works. It's 10% of your bonus AP also, so it scales pretty well into the late game. You get an extra 20 off of this. But it's mostly for laning, but it's decent late game in terms of just like a little bit of extra healing. But if you do the math on this, if you work this out, even if it's only giving you 20 per 20, that's 1 HP per 5, which is 5 HP per 5. That almost doubles the regeneration rate of a lot of champions out there. Like Lulu, for example, starts off with 6 HP per 5. And this is giving you 5 HP per 5. So realistically, for a lot of champions, this is going to be like, if you have 10 HP per 5, which is a lot, this would effectively be giving you 1 rejuve bead. Versus if you have 5 HP per 5, that would be 2 rejuve beads. So I think that a lot of champions in the early game are going to have somewhere between like 6 to 8. So I just calculated this rune as being worth about 1.5 rejuve beads, which is a 225 gold value in the early game. So you get full value out of it early on. That's a pretty damn good rune. 225 early doesn't require any extra stacking. Just baseline, you walk in level 1 with that much value. That's really good. So I think Taste of Blood is pretty huge, especially on, you know, just people that aren't going to have a lot of sustain lately. So like a Lulu or really anybody's going to like this. I think AD carries would love this as well. And remember, it's all damage. You don't have to auto attack with this. You can trigger it with an auto attack if you want, but you can also do it with an ability that's like really far away. So it's any damage can trigger this. So that's a very powerful rune that I think a lot of people underestimate. Cheap Shot can be pretty good with certain champs. So particularly Janna, you know, can use Cheap Shot. And if you combine like Airy plus Scorch plus Cheap Shot plus something like Absolute Focus early on, that's a lot of harassment. That is a lot of harassment in the early game. Especially if you're getting 6 extra AP, like at level 1 off of Ghost Poro. You're going to be hitting people like a truck early on in the game. So I think that can be pretty strong, and this is up a lot, too. It's up every 4 seconds. So I say Janna specifically because she can target with her W. You just W somebody, and then you do have to auto-attack them. Because Airy, I believe, I haven't tested this recently, but with my research, I believe that Airy and Scorch do not trigger this. So if you walk up and W somebody with Janna, you know, the extra damage off of Airy or Scorch does not trigger this extra cheap shot damage. So you do have to auto attack because it says basic attacks and damaging abilities, not runes. So you do have to land that auto, but usually you can sneak that in there pretty easily. Especially against like melee supports or really weak AD carries early on. So things like Kaisa, Vayne, Ezreal. Usually you can sneak in that auto attack after you W them with Janna. And then Lulu is another pretty good option as well because I think that getting 3 points of Q in lane is great on Lulu in the early game. So if you just tag them with your combo, you just E, Q them, and then auto attack them once, it'll trigger it. Or you can just kind of long range try to slow them with just a Q down the minion wave, and then if it hits them, you can walk up and auto them for some extra damage. So I think there's a lot of ways to use that with Lulu and Janna that can be pretty efficient if you don't think you're going to need Taste of Blood. And then these are all pretty respectable. Ravenous Hunter can be good for later. This is great if you want to run Ghost Poro on something like Zyra. This can be pretty good because you're going to be doing a lot of damage with your plants to the minion wave. That'll heal you up quite a bit over time. It's pretty good on Lulu as well because you can Q the whole minion wave. Now, it doesn't give you a lot early on because that Q counts as AoE damage before you get any stacks. But like early on, Qing a minion wave will give you, I think it heals you for like 3. So not a ton, but you know, you can Q once every, what's the cooldown on Q? It's not that long. Once every 7 seconds or so, you can throw a Q out there. Now, you're not always going to throw it all the way down the minion wave. But, you know, once you get this to about 170, and it's hitting for 170 base on the first minion, then it's hitting for, you know, like 120 on the next 5 minions. That's going to be like 770 damage or so. So even 770 times the initial 0.015 equals times 0.33. It's going to be healing you for about 4. Then if you do get a stack in there, it'll be, I think it's 2.5 per stack. So even then, what was it? It was 7, forget my numbers now, 770 time. That's not including, if you hit a cannon minion, it'll give you a little bit extra. But 770 times 0.04 times 0.33. That's 10. I mean, that's pretty damn good every 7 seconds healing for 10. So it adds up quickly. If you just get 1 assist or 1 kill early on, by the time you get to level 5, it's giving you some pretty decent healing. So I think that that could be something worth exploring. The Ravenous Hunter on Lulu or Zyra. Any of these poke champs, Brand, Lux, things like that. I think that could be a pretty good choice. Now, Relentless Hunter, they just buffed as well, so you can get up to 55 extra movement speed off of that. That's huge. So, you know, if you want to take this on someone who's going to roam a lot, like an Alistar maybe, or a Nautilus or a Blitzcrank, like, it could be pretty solid as well. And then I think the Ultimate Hunter is really underrated. I mean, up to 25% cooldown is a lot. Now, it doesn't do anything in the laning phase. This is partially why Ulti Hunter is seen as weak by a lot of people, but on Vayne, I've seen some players, even before the buff to Ulti Hunter and Ghost Poro, taking like Taste of Blood and Ulti Hunter on Vayne. Any supports that are going to have a really good initiation ult might like this. So like Rakan obviously comes to mind because he scales really well with AP, and he benefits very heavily from his ult. Even after the nerf, it's still one of the best ults in the game. And then obviously something like Nautilus, Leona, any of those hard engage supports that rely on their ultimate to engage, because you're really going to be able to leverage that cooldown, right? You're really going to be able to make a play every single time that's off cooldown. So that's really nice. Versus like kind of reactive champions, you know, things like Janna, who really want to wait for specific moments to use her ult. Ulti Hunter's probably not going to be as good, but she could take Relentless Hunter. So... and then 80 carries like Varus or Ashe that have a really high impact ult might want something like this. Ashe specifically could take Cheap Shot because one auto attack will trigger Cheap Shot with your Frost Volley, your Q charged up. So that could be a pretty powerful harassment tool. But then also, you know, just having your ult up more with like Ashe, Varus. Vayne already thought this was pretty good because she has a huge impact with her ult. Maybe even Twitch. I mean, Twitch's ult's really strong. for team fights. So I don't know. I don't know how many people, but I know there's almost something for everybody here, whether it's Ravenous Hunter or Relentless or Ultimate. They've buffed a lot of these over time, except for Ravenous. They nerfed that one because it was OP. But they've buffed a lot of these other ones over time. There just hasn't been a really good reason to go into this tree. It's close, but it's just always been a little outshined by Sorcery and recently Inspiration. But the fact that this gives you so much insane gold value early can give you a reason to take this again. So if you need the sustain in lane, you can take the Taste of Blood. If you just want to go for some more scaling power, these are all pretty good options. Ingenious is a little weird, but if you go for a champion that gets Redemption plus Locket, it actually can be really good. There just aren't that many champs that are going double activatables these days. Because a lot of champs are either going Ardent Censer or Athenes fairly early. Now, remember that this does affect your sweeper as well, so it is going to give you a chance to have a lot more vision control later on in the game. But it's probably not worth it on most champs. Maybe, I mean, I could see maybe something like if you want to go Shirelias as a secondary. I don't know. I mean, Thresh is the one person that I mentioned on here who has lately kind of been going Redemption plus Locket, so maybe it's good on him, but either way, I think there are a lot of other good runes that operate as a good secondary choice for Poro. So Poro is giving you more value than Boots, a lot more value than Boots in a similar time frame, especially now that the Magical Footwear has been nerfed to 12 minutes. I think you can almost certainly get your Ghost Poros online in a lot of situations if you optimize it the way that I'm talking about by 12 minutes. So I think that it's giving you a better value proposition in terms of raw gold, and Domination is potentially gives you more sustain than Biscuits with Taste of Blood, and it allows you to have some other options too. So it's a lot more modular, it's a lot more flexible depending on what's going on in the lane. Even Relentless Hunter on 80 carries could be pretty good. I mean, it lets you rotate around the map really quickly. That's been part of why Misfortune has been so strong in solo queue lately with that new build. It's just because she's so fast. So, I mean, I could even see something like 80 carries going for Relentless Hunter now. Some 80 carries with the Sustain Hunter. I've seen some people doing that as well. Ravenous Hunter on some people like Twitch, who can do a lot of AoE damage. Even someone like Sivir, can heal off a ton off of Ravenous Hunter, right? I think all of her bounces count off of her Ricochet. And her Q definitely counts, but I think the Ricochet bounces might count as well. I'm not sure if Draven Axis count or not, but that's a really damn good value proposition, I think. And there's a lot of other good stuff there, too. So like I said before, I think that it could be really good on 80 carries also, because they can use Taste of Blood to go with it for that sustain if they want that sustain that they're missing off of Biscuits, or they can go for some of this other snowbally stuff. I mean, just imagine someone like Draven, going Klepto to start with, right? He goes Klepto and Boots and Biscuits, and then as a secondary, he decides to go for the Ghost Poro, and then something like Taste of Blood. Like, you're getting so much lane oppression, you're getting so much sustain, and you're getting 600. Now you're getting 500 gold off of Klepto, plus 650 gold off of Ghost Poro, plus an additional 350 gold off of Boots. So you're getting 1,500 gold off of your runes. If you go this with Draven, pair it with an Alawi, and you're probably getting, over 2,000 gold off of Klepto and killing Alawi spirits. So you could get some insane, massive gold off of this, potentially, with some champs out there. Okay, so how do you stack it so fast? I already mentioned that a little bit. You just place it in that forward bush so that both people are going to spot it. You can put it in lane and be a little cheeky, like I mentioned before, but they're going to see it from a distance, potentially, and then it's only going to trigger on one person, versus if you put it in the bush, it's a lot more likely to trigger on two people. And a lot of people aren't going to understand what you're doing. So many people don't read patch notes. There's a lot of YouTubers that are probably not going to catch on for a long time that this is actually really good. We'll see. But they're just going to keep walking up to that bush over and over again with two people. So I would put it in that bush that's really forward right here, depending on which side you're on, like this bush or this bush. One of these places. And then that way it's got the maximum coverage right here, and it's really, really likely to see people whenever they come up. So that's how I would do it. So each enemy spotted gives you those stacks. We talked about that. So the enemy can counter it potentially, but they have to sweep your ward before you do it. The one drawback, as I keep mentioning, is you're not going to have vision in this river while you're using your 1 minute wards there. So tell your AD carry to put vision in the river. Just tell them that you're stacking up Ghost Poro. The AD carry can stack it too. You can have 2 of these in the same place. So if your AD carry puts it here too, if your AD carry gets on board with this, you can both put them here, and it'll trigger on both of them at the same time. So there's no limit. You can even stack multiple wards here if you want to. So, you know, whenever you first come to lane with your ward item or whatever, if you don't have it fully stacked, you can put 3 of them right here. It'll trigger all of them. So you are giving up vision a little bit. Although, once again, you can slow down your stack generation a little bit if you don't want to be as greedy and put a Ghost Poro here to spot the first scuttle. And it can give you, you know, pretty good vision. If you put it right dead in the middle of the river, it'll probably be able to give you vision of this whole choke point. But yeah, the best places to put it late game that I mentioned before, you know, like right here, obviously, like really slender areas, or just around ramps. You know, if you put it like right here, or you put it right here. Some of the worst places to put it, though, are like here, because they can potentially walk around it and see a lot. Right here is kind of rough, too, because if they just walk down here like normal pathing going to, you know, their golems, then it's probably not going to see them. Here is slightly better, because they're likely going to walk through this path one way or another. But like, here's a rough spot, here's a rough spot. So those are good places for normal wards, but not for Ghost Poro. And then putting them like kind of deep into something, like around here on Baron's pretty bad, so it's not going to be able to see if someone's walking this way. So there are some limitations to the Ghost Poro, but once again, even if you never use it optimally ever again in the game, just getting the gold anyways is going to be really strong. Okay, so best champs for this rune. So anyone that scales pretty well with AP, this is going to be optimal, but particularly champions that do not need to get revitalized. So that is going to be Soraka and Sona. Probably do not want to run this. They do scale really well with AP, but the problem is Revitalize is so strong on them because they have so much base healing in their kit that you're going to have to go Airy plus Revitalize, I think. But other champions that don't have to go Revitalize, like Rakan specifically, can be really strong with this. Rakan can even get Revitalized plus this because he doesn't run Airy a lot. You can run Airy with Rakan if you want to get the Nimbus Cloak, but Guardian is still going to be super popular. So you can get Revitalized plus this if you want to, which can be really good. But either way, Rakan can comfortably get this. I think Lulu can get this. She doesn't have as much plus healing and shielding that matters in her kit. Her shield is okay, I guess. It's one of the weaker shields after the nerfs last season, but her ultimate doesn't benefit at all from plus healing and shielding. So, you know, I think she can a lot more comfortably get this, and she can abuse either Ravenous Hunter or Cheap Shot as well. So that's an extra bonus. I think Nami can do this. Nami does like Revitalize, but at the same time, kind of like Lulu, she only has one skill that benefits from it. But she does have really nice AP scaling, so it'd be good on her. Janna does like plus healing and shielding off Revitalize, but she can use Cheap Shot really well for harassment. And I think that Ghost Poro would suit her well. I think the AP scaling would make up for the fact that you're not going to have Revitalize. Because your shield's not up all the time anyways in the early games. You usually have to get 3 points of W in lane just so you can do anything. Zyra's obviously going to love it. I think that, you know, I haven't tested it out. You might still want to go Comet on Zyra, but I know that Dark Harvest was pretty good for a while. Some people were trying out Electrocute. I think Dark Harvest could still be really good on her. And if you're going into Domination anyways, this is kind of a no-brainer, I think, with Ghost Poro. But you could even go Comet and then get a secondary Taste of Blood plus Ghost Poro or Ravenous plus Ghost Poro, and that can be pretty strong. Same thing with Bran. And I think Pyke can use this pretty comfortably as well. You know, you're probably going to want to go Aftershock still on Pyke, even after the nerf. But then you could go in here and get Ghost Poro, and then either, I think Relentless Hunter would be really good on him. It'll allow you to roam around the map a lot faster. So I think Relentless Hunter plus Ghost Poro could be good. Gives you that extra AD, makes your lethality hit even harder. You scale really well off of AD because it, you know, just works with all of your abilities. So I think those are probably the best. So, you know, you can get it on the tanks if you want to. Not going to have as much value just because a lot of tanks don't scale super well with AP, but there are some, like Nautilus has pretty good AP ratios. Blitzcrank surprisingly has pretty good AP ratios. Leona and Alistar not so much, but I mean, it's something. You could try it out. You can see. They may still want to go footwear plus biscuits or minion dematerializer. But it's definitely something to consider, especially on the tanks that have good ratios. Like, I think the best ones are going to be Nautilus, has really good AP ratios, and I don't remember the other one that I mentioned. I'm kind of zoning out here. Obviously, Rakan's not a tank, but he is an engage that scales super well off of AP. But Nautilus is probably the best. But you can try it out with the other ones. That's the best one I can think of, tank that might want to run it. Nautilus could potentially even run Ravenous Hunter because he does pretty good damage to minion waves off of his E. Although I think that there is definitely something to be said for getting 55 extra movement speed off of Relentless Hunter. So, you know. And the thing is, if you go Relentless Hunter too and you start to get that stacked up, you may not even need to go Mobies. You might be able to go Ninja Tabby or something like that. So that could be pretty handy as well. Anyways, that's going to be it. I don't want this to be too much longer. I wanted this to be a fairly quick guide. I know it's still 30 to 35 minutes, but I'm trying to get guides down to 30. I just want to give you the in-depth scoop, recommend certain champions. How do you counter this if the enemy's doing this? Obviously, you just sweep their forward brush, which is where they're probably going to have it. So you want to get a sweeper or some control wards. Just get control wards on your first back and just get control of your most forward bush. They could adjust their play and, you know, put the Poro in an enemy bush, or they could just put it flat out in the middle of your lane. And force you to give them some stacks, pretty much. But you can definitely slow them down a little bit, especially if the AD carry does it. You can slow them down a little bit by just keeping a control ward in your forward brush, if you can have control of that bush and you're not getting pushed in. And you can walk around. You know, if you do want to give up that brush, if they do have full control of it, if you can't keep a control ward there and you're worried they might put a Ghost Poro there and stack it with their AD carry, then you can just like not walk close to that bush. You just walk around the edges, and Ghost Poros should not spot it. But yeah, it's kind of tricky to counter it, but it can definitely be done, although they can make some adjustments as well. So anyways, that's going to be it. Let me know what you think about this video. If you want to see more videos about kind of these like new niche things that I think could be really powerful, some off-meta stuff. I also just recently did a video for Sona Taric, and then I did one for Alawi Draven, and why those are pretty popular right now. Well, they're not super popular, but why there are certainly some all caps videos about them right now, and why they potentially can be good in certain situations. So I'm going to try to do more of these off-meta videos. I know people like them, but I want to make them like real good, well-researched, well-thought-out videos, not just all caps clickbait stuff. And so I'm just going to be examining a lot of the other popular builds that are going around, either mentioned in some of those clickbait videos or just things that I think of like this that haven't been mentioned a lot in clickbait videos, and just try to give you the inside scoop on some innovative, new, and interesting stuff that's going on out there. So I know, you know, I've always said I don't like recommending like bad stuff to people just to get views, just to give people some novelty stuff. I like to give you the inside scoop, the real information, to let you know what's good, what can help you actually climb. But I think analyzing some of that stuff out there that's kind of the clickbaity stuff, or that's kind of the off-meta stuff, and just giving you some real talk, just saying, is it good, is it not in certain situations. I said Alawi Draven, very good in solo queue if you can get your Draven on board. But I said that the Sona Taric is great in pro, but not as great in solo queue. So that's kind of the TLDR, but be sure to watch those videos if you want to know why. And be sure to check out, like I said earlier, the tier list video. We have a ton of those. We have a lot of topical guides about more traditional stuff, like how to macro better, how to micro better, does luck exist in League of Legends, how does dodging work, when should you be dodging and why, one-tricking videos, all sorts of great content out there. We have coaching sessions, over 175 on the channel, cataloged in a playlist. You can very easily just flip through and find any champions you might want to learn more about and just listen to some commentary on that champion. I have individual champion playlists, so if you just want to watch all Zyra, all Janna, all Sona, whatever it is that's your favorite champ, I do probably have a playlist for that champ. You can click on it, flip through those. Some of those are older videos once you start going deep into those playlists. But I still think the playstyle is the same for a lot of champions. You can still learn quite a lot off of watching those. And yeah, like I said, also we stream starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'd love to have you. It's a wonderful community. I try to be as interactive as possible with the chat to answer any questions that you have or comments that you may have. And it's very, very friendly. It's not like, unfortunately, what a lot of some of those bigger channels the chat devolves into, which is just a lot of like meme spam and, you know, sometimes some negativity depending on what's going on. It's a really friendly, it feels like you're actually talking with people in the chat. So that's going to be it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy the channel. Check out the rest of the content, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.